Chapter 11. Once I had breakfast with the family, Aunt Gladys left me alone with Gideon and my jumbo carrot cake. I was in better moods, especially seeing how she finally took me off of the mantle for my 18th birthday. It was a breath of fresh air seeing eye to eye with the woman who'd raised me since I was 2. The rarity of it all made me hopeful of better things to come, making me forget that I was supposedly on Reese's hit list. Oh, right, about that. I'd nearly forgotten how I was wanted dead by everybody, including my fated mate. Thankfully, Gideon didn't waste any time in getting me started with training. He'd promised to get the ball rolling after an hour, and sure enough, we were already suited and ready to go. The space he had in his private gym was big enough for him to teach me some basic hand-to-hand combat moves, the practice falling into early noon. After 2 hours sweating it out, my body was screaming at me to stop, but I kept going and begged Gideon to ignore the terrible exhaustion on my face. Luckily, I didn't skip out on the pre-training stretches. Nothing burned my chest more than those repetitions. Gideon was heavy on execution, so if I was even the slightest bit off in my footing or posture, he'd make me do it all over again. Combat training turned into a cardio workout the way he had me running those drills. By the time 1 p.m. came through, he finished the session. And what I learned in those few hours were priceless. Base-level self-defense tricks, exposing weak points, vital guard Gideon didn't want me learning anything offensive yet, not until I was better with my stamina awareness. Disabling my opponent had priority over anything, and I expected to grow more confident in my ability to do so the more I practiced with my bodyguard. But for now, I needed a shower. As soon as we stepped out of the gym, Gideon stripped off his sleeveless, fitted black top as if the gun show my entire training session hadn't been distracting enough. I darted my eyes away so he couldn't accuse me of staring, taking my cell phone off the corner of his desk instead. When I scrolled through my messages, I realized I missed a call from someone who wasn't in my contacts. My guess, it was Reese trying to set up a place and time where we could meet up again tonight. "What are you going to tell him?" Gideon said, my head jumping to him at his comment. "Huh?" "Reese," he followed, just as I caught myself giving him a blank stare. I guess I didn't expect him to know who the hell I was texting. Though figuring it out wasn't exactly rocket science, I only talked to Gladys on the phone, and she wasn't scheduled to ping me yet, seeing as she just left Gideon's apartment. As for Carly, she wasn't a buzz-my-phone type of girl, even though Gideon didn't know I had any real friends. Once I got rid of the startled look on my face, I swallowed the nervous lump in my throat and answered him honestly, "I have no idea." "If he knew where you worked, he knows where you go to school. Going back right now is dangerous," he warned me as he took the water bottle from the counter. "I'm not going to let Reese put my life on pause, Gideon. It's either that or have no life at all. Just give me the word and I'll execute him for you." I choked. "Wait, no one is executing anyone, all right? The feelings you have for him won't be a problem once he's gone." "That's not what I'm worried about, Gideon. I'm worried about you." "You shouldn't. The setup will take time, but it is doable." He offered me the chilled drink, and I took it passively. "I have an idea. It's not great, but it's an idea nonetheless." I stuffed my cell phone in my yoga tights and took in a silent, long breath. The chance that Gideon would actually go along with this reckless idea was slim, but I had to give it a shot regardless. "I was thinking about taking Austin up on his offer, on being his mate." He scrunched his face at me. "For protection, security. I know I have you, but I need someone real time. Call it a 4th layer of insurance. I'm not entirely sure that creating a pseudo-union with Austin is your best bet. If you've forgotten, he's already on Reese's radar. It's like dangling 2 carrots in front of him, and he'll be ready to pluck both of you up in a heartbeat. Trust me, I hate the idea of partnering up with Austin too." "Then don't. Thea, there are better ways to go about this." None of which I could see myself doing. I walked over to him and dropped the bottle on the kitchen island, then turned to him squarely. "Like I said, I'm not putting my life on pause for him. I consider that as hiding, and hiding is only good for a little while before shit hits the fan, and I'm exposed anyway. The guy is a sleaze, but he already established himself as someone who's interested in a hybrid like me. I don't have many options, Gideon. If you're sure Reese wants me dead, there's power in numbers. The quality of those numbers is what's important, not the quantity. Highlanders are filled neck-deep in omegas. You need real fighters on the line, not foolish humans desperate for superpowers." And then come with me, I asked him, my voice softening at my request. If you're afraid the plan won't work, then join me in the Highlanders. I'll let Austin know it's the only way I'd agree to being with him. That way you can have a peace of mind. I smiled, our gaze still locked on one another. Sounds good? Anything to keep you safe, Thea. Promise me that you won't go after Reese, not alone, not right now. He gave me a short smile, one that was believable enough. My request wasn't a show of skepticism on my part. Despite never seeing the man in action, I could tell with the way he trained me and with the way he carried himself that his title was well earned. He was good at what he did, not to mention unafraid and headstrong. I had no doubt in my mind he'd go after Reese with everything he had, but that truth was the reason I didn't want him going out there by himself. Gideon was relentless, and Reese had a record of being just as determined. Having those two men clash now wouldn't end well for my assassin guard, Reese easily pulling in more numbers than Gideon. Gideon was a one-man army. Reese was over 300 men deep. While I was flattered by his unyielding devotion to yours truly, I'd rather have Gideon in my arms than have his remains tossed in a ditch somewhere. You can touch them. He said no, purred. The suggestion flew out of his lips with zero context. Shamefully enough, I knew what he was referring to, my eyes gravitating to those rippling washboard abs. I guess I wasn't as subtle as I thought I was, a guilty blush finding my face before I could even give him an answer. My jumbled words didn't have a chance to make it out of my head, my hesitation bringing Gideon to follow for me. He grabbed my wrist and inched my fingers toward his sculpted stomach, the striations along his sides slipping my lips ajar in awe. It's easier when you don't talk about it, he whispered, looking down at my height. That kiss? I gasped under my breath, Gideon's intentions in those lustful eyes as bright as day. When my fingertips touched his firm abs, I felt chills run down my spine. It was one thing to kiss my sexy hot neighbor, but another to fuck him. His body was rock hard, and so was that growing member imprinted on his sweatpants. My breath escaped me when he pulled me in by my wrist, Gideon sweeping his other arm around my waist lovingly. His thumb stroked my face gently, the deep gaze he was sending me rendering me utterly still. And then he laughed softly. It was rare for Gideon to laugh. You're afraid? I gave him a sour, sheepish look. No, I'm not. You're shaking. Oh, gee, thanks. That made me feel a whole lot better. I'll only take you there if you're ready. Gideon! You don't have to apologize. I scoffed with a wise grin on my face. Boy, it sure is scary seeing how well you know me. I've been around you long enough. Not as long as I'd like, I confessed. Maybe you're right. This is still very sudden for me, you know? I'm still having a hard time understanding why someone like you would ever want to be with someone like me. Where's the mystery in that? He said, his fingers grazing down my neck and over my nape. You're giving yourself too little credit, Thea. I like how I feel when I'm around you, Gideon. Safe, warm. I can be as snappy as I like, and I don't have to hide who I am when I'm with you. It's like bringing all the good things of being home with Gladys here. You're my humble slice of feel-good. I can't put my finger on it, but having you with me feels natural. You're different, in a mysterious but good way. He leaned into my lips and gave me a soft and tender kiss. That's good to hear because I'm not going anywhere. Next scene. I'd just slammed the brakes on him, and it showed. The heat permeating his body was calling out to me, but I chickened out. I was a virgin, with no prior experience with guys. So that moment with Gideon was overwhelming, so much so that my body reacted to it in the most embarrassing way possible. I wasn't even aware I was shaking until he'd said something. You could almost say that the immersion was a tad frightening. He had my lips between my legs sweltering, my heart going, and my stomach stuffed with raging butterflies. My senses were going haywire, and the fight I had to endure to tame it was a struggle. Regardless of what my body wanted, I was afraid. Afraid that my noobishness would embarrass me in front of Gideon. In any case, he was understanding. He made a joke about an exclusive pass to a peep show in the shower as a show of good faith, and I rejected the invitation. The smartass was messing with me, a telltale sign that he was getting more comfortable around this alpha wolf and her shenanigans. I meant what I'd said back there about not seeing the attraction. Granted, I was something to look at. But Gideon wasn't shallow-minded. There was more to catching his attention than appearances. I just knew deep down there was. I then wondered if Auntie hadn't assigned him guard duty, would he ever have given me the time of day? Maybe he was drawn to my spunk or my tenacity. Or a little bit of both. Only time would tell, but for now I just liked spending time with Gideon as always, while getting accustomed to him spoiling me with tender kisses and attention. I didn't bother working myself up with the details. He made me a nice power smoothie before I went to my evening class, Gideon taking the bus ride there with me. Once I got to class, the hour dragged. Time moved a hell of a lot slower when you're freaking out, and right now I was sweating inside my own skin from how brave I was to ignore Reese's calls. Honestly, I had no clue how to deal with him. And Gideon had been focused on making me change my mind on that bus ride here. And here I thought he'd just wanted to give me some company. My leg was jittery, my body restless. I kept looking over my shoulder in the small-sized classroom like I had a hawk hovering over me, right up until dismissal. I jumped so fast from my seat I nearly knocked the desk over. When comparing this tuck-and-hold lifestyle to hiding, it was hard to see the benefit of putting my neck out to the Reaper wolves. But I swear this was better than the alternative. At least this way, the sound of my own breathing and spiraling boredom wouldn't drive me insane. I wailed, bumping into someone as I walked down the hallway. Admitting I wasn't paying attention, I snapped my head up as I took a couple of steps back, noticing Conceit Reincarnate standing right in front of me. "Evening?" Austin swayed. "Funny bumping into you tonight." I scowled at him. "What? Are you stalking me now?" I eyed him up and down, realizing he was wearing something less flashy, more conservative. He tossed the leather jacket over his shoulder and approached me humbly. Can't say the idea hadn't crossed my mind, but don't fret. I let my betas handle all of the light work. He stroked his chin and cocked an eyebrow at me. "I noticed that you're a bit jumpier than usual." "Oh yeah, I say you're looking into it too much." I continued to pace down the corridor for the bus stop. After my English comp class was over, there was no reason for me to linger on campus longer than I had to. But I had to admit, bumping into Austin was a godsend. Still, I was too proud to ask this asshole for help. He followed a half step behind me over my shoulder, the man not respecting my boundaries one bit. The silence was making me nervous, and it felt like at any moment, Austin was going to leap at me again. So I sassed him. "Don't you have somewhere to be, like, I don't know, a class? I actually don't go to this school." "All the more reason to believe you were watching me." "Heh, I already admitted to doing that. Can't we quit living in the past, like, say, yesterday?" His words stopped my stride in the middle of the whitewashed walls, my glare on him narrow. "I know your little secret, Thea. You're Reese's mate." I froze. "And you know what that means, right? So how about we talk about my proposal over dinner? I know a nice pizzeria about 15 minutes away from here." Great. Chapter 12. So much for acting all high and mighty. I rolled with the punches in this case being Austin's absent chivalry. The guy was seriously rough around the edges, with no self-awareness of how unbearably conceited and overinflated he was. Despite that, I was still strangely attracted to him. He had this unyielding confidence to him that turned me on. Throughout the entire car ride to Stevens, he kept talking about himself. No mention of his pack and no mention of his immediate family. When we sat down to eat, his words started to deplete, only because I started asking him some serious questions like, why are you running away from Reese? And when are you going to step up and push his betas back? I quickly realized that Austin wasn't the aggressive type when it came to the Reaper wolves. To him, he had the best reason in the world. Normally, I'd agree, but this passiveness could only work for so long. I could tell that Austin was scared, for not only his pack, but for his life. How about we settle down with all of that Reaper talk, yeah? We don't have much time to talk before the cavalry arrives, he said, with one arm slouched on the backrest of his booth. He was sprawled out comfortably on his seat as the waitress came in with our pepperoni double cheese pie, his eyes on me hard. That devious grin on his face was making me nervous until he pointed his head to the side, by the counter where a bottle of hot sauce was. Mind getting that for me? Yeah, I do mind. I'm not your slave, I bit back. Please, babe, he begged, and I sighed. If I was going to stand up and fetch something for him, I was going to make a show about it, letting him know the extent of my irritation with the pent-up shoulders, the heavy steps, the whole 9 yards. When I slammed the bottle on the table and sat back down, he didn't hide the fact that his eyes were glued to my bouncing chest. You're a doll, he whispered with his elbows on the table and his body leaning in for a close-up. I gotta hand it to you, Thea, you're definitely a survivor. Rumor had it that Miles's kid managed to escape that night. No one could find her. The fact that you're a hybrid made you all the more difficult to find and bring down. Still, that doesn't make it impossible. You've been pretty well hidden for all of these years, and then out of the blue you pop up, making your grand appearance to wolves again. Except it wasn't out of the blue, was it? It was planned. You were hoping to find your mate and have him help you rebuild the Onyx Wolves. Which begs the question, why did you agree to come out with me tonight? After you'd been so hands-off with me before, desperate. Yeah, I must be. Seriously, I want to hear it. I want to hear you say that you want me. That look on your face is making me reconsider giving you 5 minutes of my time, let alone an eternity. I took a sip of my water and then cleared my throat, Austin reeling back into his seat again. You got a stubbornness on you, all right? You think you're too good for me? Is that it? Let's just say I know my worth. Really? At face value, I wouldn't put you at gold tier, and yet you're walking around like you're worth $500,000. You might want to dial it down a bit, Thea. I am the one doing you a favor here. You have a funny way of saying, saving your hide. I'm gonna teach you to show me some respect. As your alpha, you're going to learn to fall in line with the rest of the pack. Under me, where you belong. I promise, you're gonna have a fun old time looking up to your king. I don't disappoint. He winked. Is that why your fated mate left you? Did she get tired of being underneath the king? He bit, and I bit back. I wasn't shy with my sharp tongue, and that comment I'd just made turned him sour. Good. Maybe that humbled him up a bit because he was forgetting something important. This was no one-way street. We needed each other. And he ought to start acting like it. There goes that attitude of yours again, he mumbled. Keep that up and I might toss you to Reese. I'm sure you'd appreciate how he tortures his prisoners. He scoffed. Hell, he might even let his betas take a couple rounds off of you first before he skins you alive. That was where I drew the line. I'd rather the Reaper wolves gobble me up than continue to be berated by this pompous bastard. I shot off my seat, the gesture leaving me with an unexpected reaction. All of a sudden, my head felt incredibly light, and the scene around me started to weave around my head. I caught my forehead in my hand and tried to brush it off. After all, I couldn't storm off properly, looking like I was 2 seconds away from passing out. You good there, Thea? Bite me. You can fight your battles on your own. You clearly aren't looking to make an alliance the way you belittle me. Maybe if you stopped seeing me as an inferior species, you can pull your head out of your ass and make this wet work. Without warning, I dropped back down, my legs giving out on me. I gasped, realizing my vision started to fade in and out. What? I panted, my sluggish tongue keeping my words away. I didn't understand. I was fine a second ago. Thea, take it easy, Austin said. A bit too easy for me to be comfortable with. You're going to hurt yourself if you don't sit down and relax. I panicked. I summoned all of the strength I could to bucket in the bathroom. It was then I knew that he had done something to me, my instant reaction being to distance myself from him. Unfortunately, the front door was too far, so I had to make it to the bathroom. I barged right in and stammered my way to the nearest stall. My body went beyond its limitations. The trip to the stall seemed like a mile the way my mind started to shut down. I couldn't process depth, color, light, or the lack of sensation in my legs again when I took a dive. Expecting a hard thud, I braced myself, until someone saved me from bashing my head on the tile floor. And when I looked up to see who had grabbed me, I finally blacked out. Next scene. Note to self, don't trust Austin. When I came through, I found myself in a dimly lit, industrial-sized garage, or maybe a warehouse. I couldn't tell, my vision was still blurry, and my body ached all over. One thing for sure, though, I wasn't at the pizzeria anymore. The cold draft against my skin budged me even further, and I gathered enough strength to roll on my side. Through my squinted, hazy vision, I noticed two figures a few wide steps away from me. One was standing up while the other was sitting down in a chair. "You sure we weren't followed?" I swear I heard Austin say, the picture slowly clearing up before me. Austin was hurt, and hurt bad. "Yeah, we're fine." The sound of a familiar feminine voice made my heart jump. It was Monica, that chick who was with Paxton on my first day in the cafeteria. I slowly sat up, the two of them noticing me. Monica gave me a bitter look, while Austin saved me some of that heat. With his forehead beaded with sweat, and his right shoulder sliced open, I actually felt sorry for him. He was stripped down to a white undershirt, which made all of that bright red blood more noticeable. Monica continued applying pressure on his wound until he sent her off, with his full attention on me now. "Rough night, huh? Why aren't you regenerating?" I asked him in a groggy voice, the first words to come out of my mouth bringing him to an abrupt pause. "It's the downside to my stagger trait. I get a nice boost of power with every strike I deal uninterrupted. But once my combo is cut, I pay the price for it. My regeneration speed is shot to 25%. It's a real pain in the ass." A silence filled the room, my head growing numb as I watched the blood continue to soak his towel. Truth be told, this was the first time I was around so much blood in one sitting, and it was making me nauseous. I swallowed the lump in my throat and darted my eyes away before a swarm of questions came over me. "For starters, why the hell did you drug me?" He grinned. "Insurance on the off chance you'd say no. And to no surprise, you did. Too bad it came at a shitty time. We had Reaper betas staking out the place. I think one of the guests made us out, and everything fell apart after that." "Was that who grabbed me in the bathroom?" "No, that was someone else, Rich. He and 3 other beta shitheads jumped me when I tried sneaking you out back. Taking out 4 of them alone while keeping you safe wasn't easy." "How did they know we'd be there?" "Connections, cover-ups, beats me. All I know is that we're lucky it hadn't been the big kahuna himself." His eyes softened on me, Austin's temperament mellowing out with a subtle sigh. "Tonight's a real eye-opener, isn't it, Thea? Goes to show how deep the Reaper wolves are. Territories mean nothing, not to them. Nowhere is safe. And honestly, I'm surprised I've lasted this long without being snuffed out. At first, when my sister Renee told me about your arrangement, I was ready to flip over backwards. I thought finally I could take a step ahead. Me and you will work together, and then maybe, fucking maybe, we'll have a fighting chance. But then Bailey came up to me the same night and told me that the son of a bitch took Paxton," he growled. "And then I thought to myself, how am I going to get him back if he isn't already dead?" A silence followed before he snickered hopelessly. It was the strangest thing, this feeling of falling backwards all over again. When I get a rare break, he is always right around the corner to bring me back down. I thought about it long and hard, Thea. And I came to a realization that I could use you to get Paxton back. If Reese hasn't killed you yet, there had to have been a good reason for it. Well, he's trying to kill me now, so then what are you planning to do with me? He smiled as he got up off his seat, his intimidating steps toward me making me nervous. I made my peace with it. Paxton's dead. The man was like a brother to me, but he told me when the time came to let him go. He begged me not to fight for him. He wants me to carry this pack strong, Thea. All the way. I want to respect his wish by doing that. Only question is, will you help me? I got up off the chaise and looked at him square. Even though he'd just drugged me, Austin still saved my life. If I could even call it that, I wouldn't have been able to fend off those wolves by myself. Despite how much I wanted to believe that Reese had my best interest in mind, I couldn't ignore what Gideon had told me and what Austin was telling me now. That being said, I still wanted to give the guy a hard time. Personally, I think you're full of yourself. I'm beginning to see that as a shared alpha male trait. He grinned. Trust me, your little boyfriend is far worse. He's not my boyfriend. Yeah, you're right. I bet on my dead pops that he'll reject you and have you killed. No one really likes hybrids. They are a stain to the wolf bloodline. But seeing as you were going to use my pack for protection anyway, it's in your best interest to tell me your full plan. My eyes grew, and that smile on his face stretched even further. That's why you said yes to my invitation, right? As much as everyone thinks, I'm no clueless moron, Thea. So that means you must know that I don't trust you. Well, you're gonna learn to. It sure beats trusting anyone from the Reaper Wolves. Reese has mutilated my men, hung 'em up like meat for me to see. Missing hearts, some in pieces, all for the purpose of sending me a message. I don't know about you, but I'm done. I'm 25 and I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired. I'm tired of having a thread-thin plan that could snap at me at any moment. I understand what's at stake here. I understand the risks I'm taking. Deep down, I know that you are tired of hiding too, Thea. And you don't want to run. You want to stand and fight. But we have to do things the right way, no matter how long it takes. All that matters is that we get out of the fight alive. He placed his good hand on my shoulder, and I looked up to him skeptically. Full transparency? Full transparency. I need to know everything there is about you for us to make it work, wouldn't you agree? Yeah, deal, I said sternly. We have ourselves a deal, but only if Gideon tags along. And by tags along, I want him in the Highlander Wolves. Gideon? Who the hell is Gideon? No sooner did he ask that question did we hear faint gargling a distance from us. Signs of a struggle, that couldn't be good. Was Reese here? Had we been made? I didn't know where to put myself. My body swept with chills at the sound of a threat headed our way. I heard a slash followed by stamping blood on the floor, a body or two dropping right after. Is that the sound of your betas being slaughtered out there? I mumbled as my heart raced. I'd told my betas to head back, Austin said nervously, ready to exit. I have a couple of freshly turned Omegas scoping out the place, and this reason right here is exactly why I opted for M instead of my veterans. Come on, we need to get the fuck out of here now. He grabbed my wrist and nudged me toward a hallway. The lights flickered before coming to an abrupt stop. The sound of a generator humming and Austin's pack screaming, begging me to move. It was dark, but I was part wolf. I couldn't navigate as well as Austin could, however. I managed to see the path before us, however vague it was, before this familiar scent wafted through my nose. We'll take the bathroom window out. The back door is too much of an obvious option. No luck. Just as we passed the hallway window, it shattered, something huge and heavy crashing right through it. Austin tried to cover me from the scattering glass, the fragments showering us both. In a hot flash, I felt this looming feeling wash over me, but strangely enough, I wasn't afraid. Through the cut of moonlight, I saw part of the intruder's face and recognized his reassuring scent. Gideon? It was then I remembered the necklace Gladys had given me. I must have sent out a distress signal down at the pizzeria. Despite my knight in shining armor coming to rescue me, I didn't want to be saved. Unfortunately, Gideon didn't care who the hell was standing between us. All he saw was a target he needed to snuff out. Austin had a busted shoulder already, so he knew he was at a handicap from the get-go. Even so, he tested the waters, and the water was piping hot. Austin tossed a sharp hook at Gideon, and the man's reflexes boggled my mind. He had inhuman speed, ducking and weaving around Austin to land a sharp jab into his ribs, the punch loud enough to leave a dent on him. I gasped at the sound of bones crushing. Gideon, stop! He immediately ceased at my command, allowing Austin to make a run for it.
Chapter 13. Reese. Moments like these weren't worth living. The burden on my back would surely break me. I couldn't face my father, not right now anyway. I'd promised him the death of my fated mate, and I had little done in the past few hours. Besides debating whether or not I could push through with it, I wasn't useful to my beta team in finding her. Despite my innate ability to track her with my scent, I continued doing things the hard way, all for the sake of keeping my conflicting intentions at bay. To kill or not to kill, how badly did I want to please father? It was 2 hours after I'd sent a group of my men to fetch her tonight, and still I hadn't gotten any word yet. Seeing as there was a delay in feedback, I imagined that the plan went south. Regardless of how my father felt about her being a half-breed, I was more than willing to put our differences aside to be with her. I'd waited 6 long years for her. I didn't have it in me to deny her no matter what she was. She hadn't answered my calls or replied to my texts. We had made a vague arrangement to meet up, and she refused to respond to me. Clearly, she caught wind of the danger my family held against her. It was only a matter of time before the curtains opened and the true nature of history dawned on her. I wasn't to be trusted, no matter how hot my body burned for her. This weight was tormenting. I needed to see her again. I was growing impatient with every passing hour, envious, angry, torn. Having my emotions so unbearably unstable drove me to the edge, and I needed an escape. Thankfully, I had a nice little punching bag in my basement, a dungeon of sorts, and a place where I kept my prisoners. Paxton was no stranger to my dungeon. I kept him hung in a prison cell, his body battered and bruised. I already had a few rounds of interrogating him, the stubborn mule being more of a silent dog than I expected. He was faithful to his weak alpha and refused to tell me where he was hiding. I took a trip down the stairs and paid him another visit. Tonight I brought my own leather strap filled with tools, and once I reached his soon-to-be deathbed, Paxton glared up at me from his suspended position, his cracked smile filled with dry blood and missing teeth. Another visit? So soon? Ah, I must be lucky. You will be soon, I spat back, my eyes crawling up his arms and to his pinned wrists overhead. The silver cuffs around them kept him weakened, the exposure to his gashes holding his regeneration at bay. The beta wolf could barely touch the floor as he hung there, his big toe struggling to resist all of the tension pulling down his straining arms. The sight pleased me, another one of Austin's soldiers suffering from my hand. I opened the bars to his cell and rolled the metal cart toward me so I could unravel my tools. The exchange was quiet, Paxton eyeing my silver knives and prods, clippers, and carving blades. Once I laid the leather holster flat, I heard his heartbeat thump, the blood rushing through him, making his wounds freshen up again. The smell was making me hungry. I'm getting tired, Paxton, the constant temptation eating away at me. I could smell a meal from a few floors up. You've been holding out on me for far too long. Hey, what can I say? I'm a trooper. You're hanging meat ready to be devoured. I have a taste for fine cuisine. And the longer I wait, the more impatient I get, I said hauntingly, brushing my fingers along the grip of my tools. Then why don't you sink your teeth into your own kind, instead of feeding on us weak breeds? Try it. It might quench that endless cannibalistic satisfaction. You have Austin's fast tongue, I'll give you that. You certainly are like brothers. It wasn't easy to find you, either. He grinned. We are pretty good at keeping our heads down. You mean running? Call it what you want. At the end of the day, we're still breathing. I'd rather run than succumb to being Reaper dinner. Was never really a fan of having my meat marinated in 11 herbs and spices. How about we compromise, Beta Wolf, I said, brushing the flat of my scalpel with my eager finger at eye level. Give me the locations of Austin's hideouts, and I will make your death quick. God, you think you'd find another way to open my big mouth, huh? I'm getting tired of hearing the same old deal over and over again. He chuckled. I thought the alpha head of you sons of bitches was smarter than that. Maybe I should spell it out for you, give it to you clean. I ain't afraid of dying. What I'm afraid of is my pack falling at my expense. If you think I'm dishing out any details about Austin, you're fucking wasting your sweet-ass time on this beta. Who exactly are you trying to fool? Because I guarantee you it's not me. You don't think that I could hear your heart going, smell the fear off your filthy skin? You are in fact terrified of going 6 feet under. No wolf in their right mind would sacrifice their soul for something so foolish as withholding information. I'm sacrificing myself for my alpha. There's a difference. You have betas, don't you? You understand the commitment that spreads within the pack. A love so loyal that it's unbreakable, no matter the circumstances. If you had any faith in your alpha in being able to protect you, then you wouldn't be in this predicament in the first place. Shut the hell up, he growled. You know I am right. If you knew for a fact that Austin could beat me, then you wouldn't be here, let alone being interrogated for his location. That spineless coward. Oh yeah? Well, that so-called spineless coward is man enough to take your girl. I sharpened my glower at him. Oh? You didn't know? Well, newsflash, Goldilocks. Austin is moving in on Thea and hard. He laughed. So you can bitch about him being weak all you want. Your fated mate is out there probably doing the horizontal dance with my alpha. He's putting her to good fucking use. Better than you following Reaper rules and getting rid of her, wouldn't you say? A baby maker is a baby maker anyway, I sliced him, shutting him up for good. The long and deep gash I gave him through his throat was premature, but well worth it. His skin sizzled at the touch of silver, while my resistance to it from my intact skin allowed me to hold it firmly in my shaking grip. He was insulting my mate's name, and the very thought of her being with Austin was crawling under my skin. How about you show her some respect, you low-life mutt? I growled over his shoulder as he gargled and choked on his own drooling blood. I pulled back, repeating what he'd said over and over again in my head, until it went numb with hate and rage. But the joke was on Austin. If he was spending so much time with Thea, it'd only be a matter of time before I caught him. Austin would have known that card was risky. So why play it? I mumbled to myself, mulling over a more proactive approach, until all of that gargling stopped and a pair of steps echoed down the basement. "Yo," Jason said, his upbeat attitude steamrolling my way. "Big brother, something told me I'd find you here. All I had to do was follow the scent of fresh blood." He chuckled, then cleared his throat and shook his head disapprovingly. "Never fails. What do you want, Jason? Dad's been looking for you." "I am not ready to pay him a visit." "Really? Because he's ready to see you, and you know what it's like making Dad wait." "I am busy. Or you're hiding from him." I tossed him a cross look, that smug smile on his face immediately shirking back. Hey, don't get me wrong. Been there, done that. But like I said, things turn real ugly when he's impatient. I don't want him lashing out on me, you know? So why is it that you're tucking your head in the sand for ostrich? Did you get on his bad side already? He got a bone to pick with you. Do you ever cease to get into people's business? Nah, I'm nosy by design, he said rather proudly. And I'm also worried about you, big bro. So is Mel. I suggest you worry about yourself, I spat back, cleaning Paxton's blood off my blade on his dark hoodie. Hey, like for instance, your depleting numbers. Sorry, the whole overtaking of the Highlander Wolves is your crusade. I already told you I wanted no part of it. It's a family project, stop denying that it is. The only difference is that I am in charge of regulating it, not him. So how about you take it seriously, and stop spreading your legs for every illiterate pup who promises you a good time? He snorted. Well, look at you, filling his shoes so well. I mean, I knew you were his favorite, but this is different. It's one thing to be his prodigy son, but another to act like his fucking twin. Have you shared your concerns about that with him? No? I thought so. So unless you want your body hanging there next, then I suggest you do what I say and stop thinking with your second head and start using the one up top. We are on the verge of conquering the Highlander Wolves, and they aren't the only pack on my hit list. Now do me a favor and take care of that mess, I ordered him, pointing at Paxton with my head. Hang his corpse out for display, somewhere Austin is sure to see it.
Chapter 14. Thea. Gideon was something special, and not in the way I was accustomed to. He was more than my firm layer of protection, my hot and sexy crush. He wasn't human, at least not entirely. The way he took out Austin like that made my skin level in goosebumps. He was strong, supernaturally strong. However, he wasn't a werewolf. If he were, I would have sniffed it off of him a long time ago. Whatever the reason for his superhuman feats, I didn't want to dwell on it. That was a conversation with Gideon for another day. I doubted he'd tell me much anyway, or chuck it to the talents of the trade. I've been doing this type of shit for years, yada yada, tack on a few more lies, so on and so forth. Right now, my mind was preoccupied with other things, and I could tell that he was distracted himself. Needless to say, my watchdog was beating himself up inside. He didn't say it, but I could feel it. It radiated all around him. His energy was different, guilt swallowing him whole. When we reached his apartment, he was skeptical about staying. Trust me, I understood the predicament we were in. Reese was watching us. This condo complex wasn't safe anymore. Despite knowing that, he brought me here anyway. He was driven by what I'd told him earlier, no more running. But tonight was a real eye-opener. Austin was right, I wasn't safe. And I needed him as much as he needed me. Being part of the Highlander Wolves wasn't even the best option. Reese wanted Austin's head on a silver plate, and the same could be said for my head, too. Before, Austin was somewhat safe. He was strategic with where he was hiding. Now, he had a beacon on his tail, aka me. With our union, he understood the risks, and yet he still wanted me on his team. I doubt that he had a solid plan for the upcoming constant barrage of Reaper wolves. As for Gideon, he had us covered, pulling out a small pendant that looked like one of those warding symbols that Auntie had around the house. He placed it between his fingers and walked up to me, the expression on his face giving me mixed signals. Whatever his motive, I trusted him, allowing my bodyguard to do what he did best, ensuring my safety. It isn't permanent. There's no telling when it'll wear off, so reapplying it is crucial. You'll know when it begins to fade, he instructed me as he brushed my hair aside and placed the pendant along my nape. It'll sting a bit. Permission to brand you? Go ahead, Gideon. I breathed in one shallow breath and then braced myself. I slammed my teeth down into my jaw while he applied the pendant, the symbol seemingly melting into my skin when he gently pressed it against me. It did sting, but this closeness to Gideon lessened the pain. I curled my fists up between us and over my chest, closing my eyes until the merging was done and over with. Once it was over, I gave my lungs some air. My fingers grazed over the warding symbol in my nape, and I thought about how this alternative to going back to Gladys' place worked perfectly with my plan of being Austin's fake mate. When I gazed up to Gideon, his emotions were all over the place. He was hard to read, the expression on my face churning. Gideon, what's wrong? He pivoted his head away from me slowly, a yearning lost in his eyes. Nothing. Hey, I'm fine. You don't have to worry. I made it out okay. He sighed, turning himself to me fully. Barely. It could have ended badly for you, Thea. I couldn't bring myself to respond. I felt terrible for being caught off guard like that. I'd admit that near-death experience humbled me out a bit. It made me feel not so invincible, even with him and Austin in my arsenal. Gideon gave me a sympathetic response, and I dissected his eager gaze. Maybe this being with the Highland Wolves wasn't the best idea. You're playing with fire, and you are bound to get burned being this close to Austin. Then what do you suggest, Gideon? You've already branded me with a warding spell, which I'm still trying to figure out how you got without telling Gladys the details. Be with me, Thea. It goes against how you feel, but your protection is important to me. My heart lurched at those words, because deep down inside I had wanted so badly that he'd say them to me one day. My breath hitched as I remembered how much I loved hearing him speak to me so tenderly. Like now, when he said, "That way I can guarantee your safety." I knew enough to understand the intensity of our connection. Gideon wanted me and I wanted him too, but we already had a plan. We already discussed me being with Austin. In his request, I gauged that he wanted me to abandon the notion of fusing with the Highlander Wolves. He didn't want me being in this fake relationship with Austin. Whether it was from jealousy or underestimating Austin's ability to protect me, I saw doubt in my watchdog's eyes, and he was serious about what he'd said. But when I opened my mouth to ask him how long, he lunged at me. His lips parted mine with a groan, Gideon grabbing me hard around the waist, pulling us together so quickly that I almost fell over. His hands snaked their way under my shirt and over my skin, the sensation sending raw impulses through my body. And suddenly, I could barely breathe. My pussy clenched with heat, my nipples hardened. Gideon was breaking my shy, good girl mold as he pressed closer to me, kissing me harder than before. I loved how spontaneous his passion was, and I loved it even more when he took what he wanted without my permission. I'd grown more comfortable with him the longer we'd kept each other company, becoming confident in the idea of us being together. When Gideon kissed me like this, I had no doubt that he'd take care of my needs. When he touched me like this, all I wanted to do was surrender to him. He scooped me up underneath my thighs and carried me to his bed, then pressed me into the mattress. I sank against the comforter once his weight chased me down, and before long we were tangled up on top of it, panting and moaning, our bodies growing hot with sweat. His breath on my ear, his grip down my waist. He was slowly stripping my tights off along with my panties, Gideon distracting me with his soft lips along my neck. My eyes rolled to the back of my head. "Oh, God," I whispered from between breaths. "You feel so good, Gideon." He bit lightly at my shoulder as he slid down the length of me with his hand. Gideon drew away from me gently, sitting up on the bed as he straddled my legs, before lifting his top over his head. I watched him remove every piece of clothing carefully and methodically off his sexy bod, the way he stripped himself getting me even more bothered and hot. There was nothing left except a pair of black briefs, my knee edging between his legs to give his heavy bulge a firm stroke. He broke into a greedy smile when he noticed how adventurous I was becoming, before he pulled the last piece of clothing free from him. This man's bod was pure sin. His girth sprung at me from the elastic of his briefs, bobbing up and down, keeping my eyes latched mesmerizingly at it. I had no idea I was holding my breath until he made a comment. "Enjoying the sights?" I gave him a giddy look as I couldn't contain myself. Gideon reached over and took my hand, demanding I take him unapologetically. He helped me wrap my hand around his impressive size, his own grip guiding mine up and down his solid shaft. "You never had the pleasure?" He breathed hotly. "Do what you want with it, Thea. It's yours." What does a girl like me do with such a permission? I was falling further and further away from my mold, from the cubicle of my mind that had been sheltered from not only the real world, but from my bodily wants and sexual desires. I craved him, the need almost unbearable. The way his skin moved up and down his strapping manhood made me drip down there, and I didn't want the feeling to stop. So I fixed myself over it, moving to my hands and knees to give his head a gentle kiss. Judging by Gideon's face, he didn't expect something this forward from me. Maybe he had settled with just getting a hand job, but I wanted something more. When I plunged my mouth over his meat, he collapsed on the bed with a gritty moan. I saw how easily he surrendered to my touch, his muscles tightening from the cozy feeling of my mouth on him, and I liked it. How a man like him could lie crippled by me left me wanting, and I watched on as he sat down on his feet with his legs sprawled out to me, supporting his weight with his straight arms behind him. I continued between his legs and worked my magic. Never had I ever touched a guy, let alone given him a full-on blowjob, but I was confident with Gideon, and he answered back reassuringly. He bucked and squirmed as my tongue danced along his bulging veins. He tensed and moaned under his fleeting breath. I caressed his heavy balls with one hand while the other stroked up and down his shaft with an immodest squeeze, as I begged my reflex to cave into his unforgiving sighs down my throat. "Yeah, just like that, Thea," he pleaded in a basking whisper, his hips gently thrusting up and down my tongue. The satisfaction coming out of his face begged me to hang in there. He looked so damn delicious the way he bit his lip and allowed me to worship his cock. My hand over his balls trailed to his inner thigh, my thumb feeling down the valleys of his toned muscles. I wanted to give him more than this amazing blowjob, my body burning to have him inside me already. Ugh! He ripped in a raw breath, Gideon exploding inside my mouth with little warning. I must have pulled out prematurely, afraid that his hot, relentless seed would leave me suffocating for air. I paid the price for being such a coward. Gideon shooting his jizz over my nose, its dripping warmth falling over my chin. "Good work, Picasso," I teased. "Sorry, I meant to say something, but it was just too fucking good." "When was the last time you busted a nut?" I asked curiously, noticing how much he'd released. "I honestly can't remember." My eyes blew up with promise. "I'm not your first, am I?" He chuckled. "No, unfortunately you're not. But you're my first good one." I couldn't hold back my fangirl giggle. "Really?" My finger lapped the cum over my cheek, and I was tempted to give him a taste. When my finger touched my lips, Gideon tented his eyebrows. He was stunned that I'd even considered it, and when my finger disappeared into my mouth, he expressed just how turned on he was by my brazen move. "That's hot," he panted, stroking up and down his hard cock. "Come get some more." Even after an eruption like that, my watchdog was ready for a few more rounds. I leaned in and licked his cock clean, Gideon moaning words of appreciation, getting me all revved up. "I'm going to fuck your brains out," he promised with a hungry, savage tone, before he impatiently scooped me up from under my arms and saddled me up over his straight stallion. I felt his sticky cock wedge itself between my ass cheeks as I sat over his hips, Gideon fixing himself to sit upright on the bed. I ran a hand across his chest, feeling the smoothness of his bare skin beneath my palms. His nipples tightened, responding to my touch. And when I pinched them gently between two fingers, he bent forward and sucked in a sharp breath. Those soft, sexy sounds made me feel powerful. They also filled my mind with dark fantasies of things I never thought I'd ever have the guts to try. He unbuttoned my blouse and undid my bra, freeing my breasts, liberating me. He cupped my supple tits in his giant hands, my arms wrapping around his shoulders and strumming the soft hairs along his nape as he indulged me. My faithful watchdog tugged and teased my nipples, his suckling on them making my vision hazy. Gideon was drawing me deeper and deeper into ecstasy. I wanted to see him lose control. I craved his release inside of me, and it consumed my every thought. He distracted me with hot suckles along my neck while he gripped my waist and adjusted me over his cock. My body responded to it naturally, tightening up at the first brush of his head along my shaven lips. I was bracing myself, Gideon whispering tender words along my ear to ease me into it. He said the more I locked up, the more painful it'll be. While I appreciated him not sugarcoating it, I had little power over how my body responded to his manhood prodding me for entry. Every part of me wanted to give him an invitation, but I was shaking outside of my own will. "Relax, Thea," he begged. "You're nice and wet. I shouldn't have too much trouble pushing through." I breathed. "I'm not controlling this." "You are, just like you're moving the lamp over my nightstand," he noted, my eyes darting to it, the object ready to take a dive. I mustn't have noticed how my emotions were tapping into my telekinetic powers. But that'd mean that deep down I was afraid of him hurting me. "You trust me?" "Of course, Gideon." "Then breathe and let me get us there. It'll only hurt for a little while. I promise you can bear it." He stroked the back of his finger down my face before leaning me into the bed and kissing me passionately. His tongue fought through my mouth, a mix of saliva and cum dancing along my taste buds. I moaned inside his mouth, my hands working their way over his shoulders and up into his hair. When he pushed the tip of his spongy head inside me, he stretched my legs wider and I took him, letting all of the pain seep through the grip I had over his silky locks. "Ugh, Gideon," I gasped, and he pulled back a few centimeters. He rocked his hips in and out until I got acclimated to his size, my thoughtful watchdog considering my limitations. He was my first fuck, and I'd have it no other way. Once the pain was gone, my mind was too. This feeling he was pumping between my thighs had my one eye flickering and my breath shot. The jolt throughout my body was nothing I would have expected, my back arching on its own as he made love to my sweltering sex pot. "You could have warned me." My panting voice moaned, my fingers digging onto the bed sheets. He'd spared me with the slow pacing. Now that he noticed I was enjoying myself, he amped up his speed and pounded me mercilessly. Gideon had me talking gibberish in T-minus 10 seconds, my body captivated with a full-blown heat of rapture. I swear for the life of me, my soul escaped from under my breath. Our skins clapped, our body heat mixed, and the room smelled like raw sex wrapped up in pure ecstasy. "Shit, Thea, you're tight." My velvety walls sucked every inch of him, and I could feel his head knocking up against my womb. The warmth he was building up in my stomach was intense, my body falling into a fitless tremor again as he pounded into me harder. Every thrust was an out-of-body experience until I couldn't take the abuse any longer. "Fuck, Gideon," I cried, gasping for air. I became undone, his hips driving into mine, stirring me crazy. He kept at that sweet spot until I broke out in a wailing plea. I held on to him as I crawled headfirst into my first orgasm, my nails digging into his shoulders while my body pressed up against him. He held me close around my hips and into him, his seed escaping inside of me. It was hot, it was filling, and most of all, it was sweet. I came so hard that I thought I'd black out. My body milked out his cock, Gideon having a hard time breathing as well. I tuckered him out, my one proud achievement. He gazed at me lovingly as he cupped my face, that charming smile on him making me feel so ever wanted and admired. With a gentle kiss, he picked me up to sit on him, his cock still plugging me. I could feel his jizz melt over my wet lips and down to places beyond. His cock kept throbbing inside me, the blood continuing to rush down my sex, too. My sensitive body fell over his wet skin inviting me for a long, sensual embrace. When his fingers combed down my damp strands, I felt tingles over me. Gideon had claimed me as his own, my sexy neighbor down the hall making this girl's dreams come true. His gentle kiss turned hungry, and I pushed into him as he explored my mouth. His tongue drew back and lapped over my bottom teeth before he suckled at my bottom lip. I couldn't hold back my giggle any longer, looking at Gideon with a flirty grin. "You have really soft, kissable lips," I complimented him. He took the moment to appreciate my body, slowly running his thumb along the silhouette of my side, giving me goosebumps. He then looked up to me again, those passionate eyes already revealing what he was about to confess to me. I held my breath, my lips slipping ajar while I gazed at him fondly. "I love you, Thea."
Chapter 15. Austin. That slick son of a bitch. So that was Gideon, huh? I couldn't lie, I was rather impressed. The animal didn't smell like a wolf, and yet, he managed to rip me a fucking new one. He had stealth, he had stamina, and he had a knack for pissing me the hell off. 10 Omegas gone. All of that goddamn hard work flushed down the sick hole in a matter of seconds. He left a hot mess for the cops to deal with. Besides adrenaline, I wondered what was in that guy's blood. It took me over an hour to heal, and when I did, the next morning was just as daunting as last night. The pains of being beaten down lingered inside me like tapeworm. It was a mental punishment I couldn't help but dwell on. Last night was a candid reminder of how crippled my pack was. I needed betas, I needed power, and most of all, I needed a mate who could help me patch this brutal, gaping wound of the Highlander wolves. There was no telling if Thea would come back. She might have agreed to our little arrangement, but her dog sicked me right at the good part. He showed her that he was much stronger than I was, so maybe now, the offer wasn't as tempting as before. Great. More self-esteem issues. Let's round them up this morning, shall we? I sighed. Bright and early, I had a meat man's breakfast, courtesy of Monica and Jeremy. My betas showed me some extra love this morning, considering all of the hell I'd been through these past couple of hours. I saw the spread on the kitchen island of a man we coped it from. Yeah, that was right. I made a quick B&E run last night after I saw this nice little mansion in the middle of nowhere. If Courage the Cowardly Dog ain't teach him a thing or two, right? Bad things happen to those who isolated themselves. Unless it was stumbling into me, which was a very good thing. Naturally, I couldn't keep them kicking. I knocked the well-to-do guy and his wife out, then tied them up in the basement. For supper, for kicks and giggles, frankly, I didn't know, and I honestly didn't care right now. I had one thing on my mind, and one thing only as I walked over to Bailey, who was adamant about giving me the cold shoulder. "Morning, Blondie," I addressed her anyway, and she continued chopping carrots on the board in front of her. Her face was stoic, focused down at the counter. I already had an idea why she was mad at me. Monica across from us trying to not make it so obvious that she was eavesdropping. So what? You're going to stay mad at me forever? "You should go eat your breakfast, Austin," she demanded me. "That's what Paxton would have wanted, right? For you to forget him and live on like he'd never existed?" She triggered me. I snatched her wrist and pivoted her around, looking at her strong and serious. "Don't you think I want to go after him? Don't you think that I want to storm in there and bash every Reaper head that crosses my line? I want Paxton back. Honest to God, I do. If I could go back in time, I'd take that stroll down the street with him, just so I could rip apart those lurking Reaper wolves. But I promised him, Bailey. I promised him I'd back off. And I'm sure as hell not going to go against his fucking wish just to put a smile on your face." "Austin, relax," Monica said, all the blood rushing to my head. I flared my nostrils at Bailey, who avoided eye contact with me as she began to whimper. "We are all mourning, is all. Paxton's death is hitting us all hard. He was like family, you know? Someone we can look up to, just like you." I released Bailey, and she dashed off with her face buried in her hands. I didn't chase her. I'd probably blow up again and make things worse. When she'd brought up Paxton, all of those repressed feelings came over me again. I'd already made my peace with it, tossing it in the back of my mind, where all of my problems tended to fester and mingle together. I suppressed the tears in my eyes and shook the sour mood away. "All right, who's hungry for breakfast?" I beamed. "Come on, let's sit. I don't want this buffet going cold." Just as I said that, the doorbell chimed. I veered my head over my shoulder, and Monica jumped. "I'll get it," she volunteered. As she passed me, I took her shoulder and gently pulled her back. "No, let me get it. We had a code here. 2 sharp knocks, followed by 1 knock, pause, and then 2 more sharp knocks. I told my wolves not to ring the doorbell, so whomever was behind that door, he wasn't our own. The two of you stay here, I ordered them. If you hear a struggle, make for the basement windows. I wasn't about to let one of my betas die again. While I had no clue how they found us, they did. And I had to do my very best to keep my friends and family alive. I cautiously walked to the front door, the foyer giving me hints of wolf already. And not just any wolf. The scent was faint yet familiar. I dropped my tense shoulders and paced faster toward the peeper, confirming who I thought was paying me a visit this early Wednesday morning. Hot hell, I was glad I was right. When I swung the door open, that sullen expression on my face immediately vanished. But then I turned to her partner creeping up behind her and sulked all over again. "Hey, Austin, we brought a peace offering," Thea said with a beautiful smile, holding a quiche dish in a glass Pyrex bowl. "Gideon made it." "Ah, then are you sure it isn't poisonous?" I joked. "Lined with silver?" She rolled her eyes. "Honestly, just having you this morning would have been enough of a peace offering. Shut up and let us in already, would you?" I allowed them inside, even the big one. And once I closed the door behind them, I had to ask, "How the hell did you find me anyway?" "Gideon," Thea said as she turned her heel to me. "He refuses to say how, though. I think he might have bugged you." Thea was kidding around, but the idea of being bugged by anyone without me noticing made me super uneasy. "Huh? Is that so? I wish I could say that I have work at 2 p.m., but with everything that's been happening, I have time this morning. And every foreseeable morning thereafter, supposedly. I hope you can spare us some time, because we need to talk together." She handed me the dish, that was still pretty warm, before I looked up to Gideon with a dark look in my narrow eyes. "This meatless breakfast snack here doesn't make us square for last night. Not by a long shot. It was her idea. What he means to say is that he's sorry," Thea apologized for him. "He thought you were a threat." "I am a threat." "That's not what I meant. Your watchdog killed 10 of my omegas and fed me a rib shot," I grunted. "You had Thea. Consider that light work to what I could have done. Are you saying that you spared me? Hey, the testosterone level is a little high this morning. Tone it down, you two. After all, we're all in the same pack now, right, Austin?" Thea looked over to me to ask, the shocked expression on my face interrupted by my two betas walking into our conversation. Monica and Jeremy stepped into the foyer to see our guests, Monica already giving Thea a bitter look. "Well, can't say I expected to see your pretty little doll face again." "Same can be said about you," Thea sassed back. "I hope this isn't some trick," Jeremy said. "What do you mean? I'm not working for Reese." Monica scrunched her face. "It better stay that way, because the last thing we need is another one of his lackeys bringing down our own." "Hey, guys, take this and give us some privacy," I said, handing Monica the dish. The two were hesitant, but they obeyed my order, and I led my guests to the sitting room across the hall. "It's nice to see that you're all healed up," Thea commented as she sat down on the cream contemporary love seat. Gideon took a seat right next to her, that stoic face on him unwavering and hostile. I sat in the armchair adjacent to them and looked the two over, realizing just how fucked I was. This Gideon guy wasn't just her bodyguard, he was screwing her. Ah, yeah, all it took was a short nap and a buttload of patience. I hate sitting down, so it was a pain. "So, have you given it some thought?" Thea asked me. "Yeah, sure. Your bronze man can join, just as long as you're in this with me." "Good. I have some sub-clauses that I need you to abide by as well. And those are?" She sharpened her steel blue eyes on me. "I'm not your pet. I'm not your slave. If we are going to fix Highlander wolves together, we do it as equals. We work as a team." I scoffed. "And I'm not in it permanently." "What the hell does that mean?" "It means that once the Reaper wolves are dismantled, I take leave and work on bringing the Onyx wolves back." "You can't be serious? Do I make myself clear?" "What? If I say no, are you going to send your brood at me?" "No, I simply walk, and you get to deal with Reese on your own." "Well, I certainly wouldn't want that now, would I?" I scratched my chin. "Tell me, what alpha in their right mind would let his mate walk? I've already made that mistake once. I'm not ready to make it again. First off, that was your fated mate. I am neither fated nor chosen. This is an arrangement, or did you forget?" "Can you point me to the bathroom?" Gideon said abruptly, and I scrunched my eyebrows at them both. "Yeah, Sasquatch. Down this hall, to your left. Make yourself at home." He got up and left Thea and I alone. The deafening silence after prompting me to get up. "Well, this is interesting. It sure is new," I said, pacing across the coffee table in front of her with my hands in my pockets. "What do you mean?" she asked, getting off her seat intrigued. "Are you sure he's your personal hitman or something more?" "Gideon is a friend," she said defensively, crossing her arms under her full breasts. Really? Because I could smell you all over him, I replied, stopping right in front of her skeptically. What difference does it make? This relationship isn't real, remember? Whoever established that? She smiled bashfully for me. No offense, but you're not my type. Oh, I'm not? I whispered to her in a raunchy tone, showing her my $1,000,000 smile as I brushed her bangs behind her ear. Then why is your face getting all red? Her eyes jumped, her lips pursed. You know he's not human, right? Austin, are you that insecure? She asked me, then tossed me the fakest, most nervous scoff I'd ever heard from her. Well, whatever helps you sleep at night. Huh, the same can be said about you. I had to change his mind. He was adamant about me not being here. Yeah, I could see why. He wants you all to himself. She blushed even harder. Let me guess, you gave yourself over to him in a nice little bow last night? It was your first time, right? Can you shut up about my personal life? It's so obvious, Thea. You have that good girl vibe all over you. It's delicious. I grabbed her waist and pulled her into me, Thea having a hard time looking at me straight until I cupped her ass. I gave them a gentle squeeze, and as expected, she protested to my handful. Don't make me go medieval on your ass, she barked at me and grabbed my wrist from behind her. This here is nothing. I'm prepping you, Thea, I cooed, massaging away at her buns. For the night of our mating ritual, she gasped. It's a fake relationship, so there's no need for all of that. Oh, but I insist. After all, how will the rest of my pack take you seriously? She had no rebuttal to that question. Thea knew I was right. So, that's how bad you want to reawaken your pack, huh? Or maybe you just enjoy the idea of us being together. You're so full of yourself, it's disturbing. I'm starting to see why Reese hesitated. Tiny little waist, a fat ass, a huge rack. Oh, please, don't stop. Your words are so flattering, and that feisty little mouth of yours to keep things interesting. I snickered. I'd say we'll work out just fine. I cupped her chin and drew my lips closer to her. I could tell you'd enjoy putting me in my place. Am I interrupting something? Gideon said, walking in on us at the shittiest time. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you are, I retorted. The asshole took to Thea's side anyway, and she peeled off of me while she cleared her throat. We could talk more about that later. As for Reese, don't worry. You don't have to sweat me bringing him to your doorstep. Gideon has it covered. Who said I was worried? You know he could have caught my scent, right? As my fated mate, he knows where to find me at all times. Yeah, I know. And frankly, I don't care. I was thinking about putting up a couple of bear traps around the area. Like I said, I'm done playing his game. She raised her brow at my remark. Bear traps? Boy, you sure didn't give this much thought, have you? I laughed. I have, Thea. Whatever. Like I said, Gideon has it covered. He warded me. Warded? What the hell does that mean? It's complicated. But not to fret though, right? Because you had a plan? She sassed me. You still haven't agreed to my terms. Don't worry, we have a deal. Let's talk more about our arrangement over breakfast, you know, and spend some time learning more about each other, seeing as you're about to be my mate. I winked. Have you already eaten? No. She looked up to Gideon as if for permission. You can stick around, right? Gideon looked at me darkly. Personally, I find you incapable of protecting Thea, but I'll try my very best to be available for her. Well, thanks for the vote of confidence. Austin, Monica walked in, half out of breath. It's Paxton. They found him.